everyone, my name is Holly, and in today's video I am going to be doing my October wrap-up. So this month definitely had its ups and downs for me, but I did find a new favorite, so that's exciting, but I was also very disappointed by most, so yeah. So the very first book I read in October was Strange Practice by Vivian Shaw, and this was sent to me by Orbit, so thank you for that. This is the first book in a urban fantasy series that upon looking at the cover, you just want to scream Halloween and perform witchcraft. Let's continue. The story begins with Greta, who is the doctor to the undead, so she treats vampires, werewolves, banshees, and ghouls. But she's answering a house call for a vampire who had a very unexpected visitor who is also a vampire, and this unexpected visitor has a stab wound and he needs help. It's causing the vampire to sweat and have a fever, and he's also going in and out of consciousness, and it becomes very clear to Greta that this stab wound is something that she has never seen before, and thus begins our mystery. That mystery started out so good, but unfortunately it does not progress very gracefully when very heavy religion is thrown in. I went into it expecting Dracula, but instead I got our Lord and Savior. Sometimes this is very necessary when a book is set in a certain time period, but this one in particular is set in modern times with sports bars and the internet and cars. I actually went into this book thinking that it was set in old times with Dracula-like vampires and old-looking London with its secret tunnels, and also a murderer running around that's called the Rosary Ripper. Like, this screams 1800s to me. No, modern day. Greta Helsing, though, as a character could not have been more perfect. I was really scared that she was going to be one of those characters who are really scared and timid and like,
I'm a doctor to all of these vampires and werewolves, and I risk my life every single day, and I'm terrified to do this.
But no, she got down and dirty. She is a professional at what she does, and her name is known throughout the undead community, so she is not afraid to put those doctor gloves on. I really wish I could say the same for the other characters, 4 of them in particular. It was so hard to distinguish them apart, and they were literally the same person. It was just one big same personality soup. So those are my thoughts. Yes, this book is very clever and it has some wit and also a backbone, maybe a brittle backbone. It definitely has its flaws, and I could not help but think of so many more ways that the story could have been told better, maybe in a more fun way, but I ended up giving this one 2 out of 5 stars. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to my favorite book of the month, because I feel like gushing right now, and the rest of this video is going to be a little bit ranty, so let's make the fun last as long as we can. And that is The Armored Saint by Mike Kuhl. So I have a spoiler-free review up on my channel right now of this book where I go so much more in depth about the plot and my thoughts on why this book absolutely blew my mind. So go watch that, because I will be keeping this review shorter. This is the first short story in a new-ish fantasy trilogy. So this story follows a young girl named Heloise who lives in a very poor village that the Emperor rules, and magic and wizards are completely forbidden. They are hunted down and killed, and even if a village is harboring a wizard, the order will come and just spread absolute horror on them. And it's the most grimdark thing that I have ever read about. It is so raw and real, and there's a certain scene in this book that just made me gasp and tremble. I literally felt like I was there in that scene watching these people suffer, and it was tragic. Heloise fully captures your attention. She is like the portrayal of love and kindness, which is weird for a grimdark story, because normally a grimdark follows a very questionable protagonist, but this is grimdark in a very different way. Also, Heloise is a lesbian, so that definitely adds this certain element to the story, and also a really nice subplot that you'll have to pick this up and read for yourself. The story is brutal, it's tragic, and it really hits hard on your emotions, and how the hell the author did this in under 200 pages, I don't have a freaking clue. 5 out of 5 stars easily. So go watch my spoiler-free review for this so that I can gush about it even more to you. So the next book I decided to pick up in October was The Wicked Deep by Shia Earnshaw. This was definitely a perfect read for October, and I'm so glad that I waited to read this in the fall, because it's just a perfect fall read, and it's definitely very bingeable. It got me out of the deep See what I did there? Mother Nature did not like my pun. Now it's going to rain. So the story begins with an ancient one. It sets the mood, telling us of a tale that happened over 200 years ago about three sisters who come together because they want to start a brand new life on this small coastal village. All three sisters are very charming and beautiful and very alluring to the men in this village, which instantly gets them labeled as witches. And then they are immediately murdered by the townspeople by drowning them in the ocean. So what does this mean for the future? Lots of teenage drinking. That's what it leads to. Just kidding. Not really though. So now every year the sisters come back from the dead and they possess girls' bodies to allure boys to their doom. This book is so atmospheric and it has this vibe that is very unique and totally different than any other witch book that I've read. I really felt like I was transported to this island and I could feel the breeze and I could taste the salt in the air. I really like the backstories that we get to learn about the three sisters and the circumstances of their death. That's definitely what made it bingeable for me. Now, the romance is what makes me go back and forth with this book. It was beautiful until it wasn't. And if you've read this book, then you know what I'm talking about. It was so frustrating because as the romance increased, my interest for the story dropped off. I also found there to be so many plot holes to the story, and I've come to the realization that every single adult on this island are terrible parents. Burn that island to the ground. Like, I don't understand why this island is such a tourist trap. Like, I get the appeal of ghost towns. They're super interesting and fun, but a ghost town that actually kills people, why would you go there? I'm absolutely convinced that the adults in this story absolutely hate children and they're just trying to kill them off by either underage drinking or ghost murder. But I ended up giving this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. I think that sounds right. The next book I had on my TBR for October was Stalking Jack the Ripper by Kerri Maniscalco. You know a book is going to be interesting when you open it up and the first thing you see is an autopsy scene. Yum. This story takes place in 1888 in England, and we're following a very high-class lady named Audrey Rose who is not interested at all in gossip and tea, but instead she's interested in science and cutting up dead bodies. And then she suddenly gets very interested in Jack the Ripper, who she stalks, literally, when he strikes way too close to home. For me personally, the best part about this book was the overall vibe and plot. The historical setting and the creepy atmosphere is what really made the story come to life for me. The old pictures that are used in this book definitely gave me chills. It did take me a while to warm up to most of the characters. Emotionally, I just couldn't connect to any of them. And Audrey Rose really bothered me. I found her to be so mean. Even when someone is being nice to her or just doing their job, she will have a storybook of insults for them for absolutely no reason. Like, girl, loosen your corset. Now, the love interest, Thomas Cresswell, who I know most people swoon about, he was definitely a mystery on his own. He's pretty arrogant and self-righteous, and with a mean main character, their love kind of blossoms in a whole different way with a lot of bickering, which I know a lot of people enjoy. Putting that aside, I did stay up far too late finishing this. I really wanted to know the mystery and the identity behind Jack the Ripper in the story, so that kept me reading until the end, but I was disappointed by that ending. It just felt so unnatural and stiff to me, and I kind of felt like I was back in high school watching a really bad play. It actually had me laughing. In the end, and after a lot of thinking and realizing I had a lot more problems with this book than I initially thought, I ended up giving this one 3 out of 5 stars. So after reading 3 kind of average books, I knew this was the point in time where I needed to pick up a graphic novel, so I decided to pick up Kim and Kim by Visaggio Cabrera and Aguirre Samrex. So what is this graphic novel about? I don't know. It's supposed to be about these punk rock transgender females who fight things in space, which it kind of was, and it should have been flipping amazing, but I found the plot to be so confusing and complicated and oftentimes very contradicting, and unfortunately that made it not fun to read at all. The story started and stopped often, like we would be on some bounty mission and then the characters would jump scene to the end of that bounty mission, so we didn't get to see any of that action. I loved the artwork though. It was very bright and colorful, and I loved seeing all of the punk rock clothing and tattoos and music, but I ended up giving this one 2 out of 5 stars. And the final book that I picked up on a total whim was Never Fade by Alexandra Bracken, and this is book 2 to the Darkest Minds trilogy. I thought the Darkest Minds was awesome. I really enjoyed it. I loved the plot, and I loved the characters and their relationships. I thought were really well done. If you don't know what the story is about, it's basically about this world where most children have died of this outbreak, and the ones who have survived end up getting superpowers. But this book dragged so much. It was just the same things happening over and over and over again, which made it so boring and such a tedious read. It was heavy on the government and special ops stuff, which is something I don't enjoy reading about, and it was literally all that was happening in the first 200 pages. And then after that, all Ruby and her friends did was run and hide, and then they would inevitably get captured, and then there would be a fight scene, and then they'd escape, and then rinse and repeat. Also, I hate to say this, and I loved Ruby as a character in the first book, but she is more stupid than ever in this. Literally to the point where I just can't root for her anymore. The things she does not make sense. And the most annoying thing about it is that she fails time and time again, and then she doesn't learn from her mistake. I'm so sad about this because, like I said, I really enjoyed that first book. So going into this, I had very high hopes. I wanted to know what our characters were doing, and inevitably I was very disappointed in this one. So I ended up giving this a 2 out of 5 stars. I actually gave this 1 star. I don't know why I said 2. And honestly, I've lost interest in continuing with the 3rd book. So thanks for that. Look at that lonely little star down there. And those were all of the books that I read in October. Tell me down below some of the books that you read, or if you've read any of these. Please tell me if you have read them. Go ahead and give this video a big thumbs up for me, and don't forget to subscribe because I upload videos every single week. Follow me on Instagram, I'm at Holly Hearts Books, and on Twitter at Holly Meese. And until we meet again, happy reading.